What do the verbs believe, remember, agree, love, hate, feel, and think have in common? They're all stative verbs or state verbs, but what are stative verbs? And how do we use them in English? That's what you'll find out in this episode of
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
If you are a new listener to the podcast, you're very, very welcome. And if you've come back from previous episodes, it's great to have you again. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with over 45 years of teaching between the two of us, we're happy to help you improve your English and take everything, your grammar, your vocabulary, your pronunciation, up to the next level. How are you, Reza?
I'm fine, Craig. I'm fine. And I'm not sure whether I should ask you, how do you feel or how are you feeling? What should I ask you?
How do you feel? Well, that's a very good question.
Well, let's go with how are you feeling?
I'm feeling fine now. I did spend a couple of days in hospital having a minor operation, and I'm really, really fine, 100%. However, I do want to say a huge thank you and appreciation to all of the staff, the nurses, the doctors, the surgeons, the auxiliary nurses, everybody working at the hospital here in Valencia. They were absolutely fantastic. Whatever salary they're getting, it needs to be double or treble. I can't say what a wonderful job they did. So I was nervous. It was my very first operation. So, of course, I was a bit anxious, a little bit apprehensive, but it was fine. And the staff were absolutely wonderful.
So that's why I wasn't sure what to say to Craig. How do you feel? How are you feeling? Because that's the topic of today. Stative verbs, and feel is a kind of ambiguous one. You could say, how do you feel? And you could say, how are you feeling? We'll talk more about that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get into that later. First, I want to say congratulations to Manuel from Madrid, who's now living in Barcelona, who recently passed a very important English test. And Manuel, you know who you are. I'm sure you're listening, so well done. Congratulations. You must be flying high after receiving such good news. We have some feedback from our friend Errico from Brazil, who came to Europe in December last year, and he sent us some feedback about his trip.
Hi, Greg and Reza. My name is Errico. Again, I am of Brazil. I sent one message for you guys on 238 episodes. I apologize for my message. It was very, very, very bad. But I am studying very hard every day with your podcast, with my tutor. So, anyway, I went in Barcelona in December. After Barcelona, I went to Holland, to Belgium, to France. In my opinion, Spain, it's a lovely place to live. Congratulations again for your job. I ask you about your question. What motive do you guys call it when many a lot names in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, favela Rio de Janeiro? Why, guys? Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Errico. It's really good to hear that you had a good time when you came here to visit those countries. Reza, any comments about his message?
Errico, thanks very much for your message. We're so happy when we hear that people from Brazil or anywhere are listening to us. It doesn't have to be a Spanish-speaking country. Thanks a lot. But I have to say, Errico, that there were a couple of things about your pronunciation which I wasn't 100% clear about. Maybe it's because I'm not used to listening to Brazilian accents and I'm used to listening to Spanish speakers. Maybe that's the reason why.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Although I did notice that the message Errico sent to us before, he didn't pronounce France correctly, and this time he did. So he's correcting his mistakes, he's improving. And what I loved about Errico's messages is that he sent 3 or 4 different messages to me, and each message was better than the last. So that's a great example of how you can improve your English, improve your pronunciation by recording messages again and again and listening to yourself and correcting your pronunciation, improving, and then send them to us and we'll give you some feedback. So I think Errico said, my name it's my name is, or probably more common, my name's. So, hi, my name's Errico. I'm from Brazil. Remember that preposition from. Anything else, Reza?
Yes, another preposition, Errico, you said, I went in Barcelona, but it should be I went to. You go to a place. So I went to Barcelona in December. Another thing, Errico, we understood you, but your pronunciation of the vowel sound wasn't quite right. But mine probably isn't either for Spain. I say mine probably isn't either because I come from Belfast and we have a particular way of pronouncing that vowel sound. But let me try and think like the Oxford Dictionary. Okay, I think it's Spain.
Perfect.
Spain.
What's my name?
Your name, if I concentrate, is Craig.
Exactly the same vowel sound.
But I'm making an effort. If I were in Belfast and I'd been there for a while with my family, my friends talking, I would say, yeah, I was talking to Craig in Spain, which is
yeah,
a different
yeah.
sound.
Now
Craig.
Now
instead
I
of Craig,
notice.
I would say Craig in Spain.
And you really sound like your brother because his accent's quite strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, the vowel sound of Spain is A, the same as in words like plane and rain and same and my name, Craig.
So look, Errico, I have the same problem as you pronouncing the word Spain, but I'm practicing and I'm getting much better.
You are.
With practice, you can do it.
You almost sound like a Londoner. So my accent is from the south of England, the London area. Another thing, Errico, was message. You need to work on the pronunciation of that word. Listen again, message. Message.
I quite like it sometimes when some of my students, I say some of my students, depends who they are, get this wrong. They say to me, for example, maybe Amparo says to me, Reza, I have massage for you. And I think, oh, that sounds good. But actually,
a Swedish massage or maybe a Brazilian massage?
Or a Brazilian, yeah. But unfortunately, they never do have a massage for me. It's merely a message. It's a message, un mensaje. It's not a massage. What a pity. What a pity.
And another thing I've noticed when Spanish speakers want to ask a question, they sometimes say one question, which you would translate from una pregunta. So I understand why, but it would be more common to ask a question like this of someone. I'd like to ask a question. So in your message, Errico, you could have said, I'd like to ask a question. I have a question for you, or I'd like to ask you a question.
I must say, Errico, I listened several times, but maybe the quality of the audio isn't perfect, and I couldn't hear exactly what your question was.
No, me neither. It wasn't clear. So please, could you let us know exactly what you're asking us? We're not sure if maybe you're asking us how we pronounce names of cities and places in Brazil, or maybe it's not clear why we speak about Brazil and Rio de Janeiro and the favela at the end of the podcast. If that is your question, it's because our friend Bruno has tours of the favela, and we mention his website because he is a very generous Patreon supporter. So he's helping and supporting the podcast, and we're helping and supporting his walking tours in the favela area of Rio. So I don't know if that's your question. Please tell us again, and we'll help you if that's not what you're asking.
We don't have any special way of pronouncing Brazilian place names. We kind of just anglify them.
Yeah.
So Rio de Janeiro. we say. But I've had a lot of Brazilian students, and I've been practicing Errico. Let's see if I can impress you. Rio de Janeiro. Hey, what about that?
That sounds good.
You've got to get that, like you said, Reza. You've got to get that R sound there. That's very important to Brazilians. They don't say Reza, they say Reza. Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
I've been practicing that. And Bahia.
It's a lovely, lovely accent. I wish I could speak Portuguese. Anyway, thank you very much for your message. It was lovely to hear from you, and we're really pleased that you enjoyed your visit to Europe. Now, let's get to the meat and potatoes, the main subject of the podcast, stative verbs. And this is thanks to Hernando Rodriguez, who gave us on Twitter the idea to talk about stative verbs today. If you want to follow us on Twitter, go to @Mancion_Twit, TWIT, Mancion Twit. That is our Twitter name. And thanks, Hernando, for the idea.
Yes, so as Craig was saying earlier, stative verbs. So what are they? Well, there are some verbs that are not usually used in the continuous form or the progressive form, as some people say. And they're called stative verbs or state verbs because they're to talk about states.
So let's imagine that you, listener, do not understand something in English and you want repetition, so you want to say that you don't understand something. How would they say that in English, Reza?
Well, we usually say, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I don't understand. You wouldn't say, I'm not understanding present continuous. That's not right. It's present simple. I don't understand.
Yeah, so that's an example of a stative verb. Now, there are quite a few, so to make this a bit easier for you, we've divided these stative verbs into groups. And our first group of stative verbs, we can connect with thinking and opinions. So things that you're thinking and when you're giving your opinion about something. For example, after this podcast, Reza, I think we should have a coffee break or a tea break. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yes, definitely. I need a bit of caffeine to wake me up afterwards.
Especially because we've got some muffins to eat as well. Some apple and cinnamon muffins that's been baked for us. So I said to Reza, do you agree? I did not say, are you agreeing? So agree is another stative verb.
We often say, I don't know. For example, I don't know what to say next. We wouldn't say, I'm not knowing. No, because the verb to know is a stative verb, so it's usually not continuous. It's simple form. I don't know what to say next.
Actually, I don't know what to say next. Oh yes, some other verbs in this group that express opinion and thinking include believe, to doubt, D-O-U-B-T, tener duda, to doubt, to guess, to imagine, to mean, what does it mean? What does this mean? To remember and to think. So all of those verbs we could say are opinion and verbs of thinking. So what's the difference, Reza, in meaning between what are you thinking and what do you think?
Yeah, they both exist. They're both possible. I always explain this with a joke. Perhaps it's a little bit stereotyping, men and women in their roles. But I say men only care about what you think, whereas women only care about what you're thinking.
I don't understand that. I mean, I don't
I'll
understand
translate.
the joke.
A los hombres solo les importa lo que piensas. A las mujeres, sin embargo, solo les importa en lo que estás pensando. Men only care about your opinions. Do you support Real Madrid?
okay.
What's better, an Audi or a BMW, etc.?
And women, like, what are you thinking at the moment? What's on your mind?
What's on your mind?
Which we spoke about last episode.
Yeah.
On your mind.
Your girlfriend, your mum, your sisters looking at you thinking, look at his face. What's he thinking about?
What are you thinking about at the moment?
I'm thinking about stative verbs, of course. So I know it's silly, but it's kind of a cliche, isn't it? That the girlfriend or the wife is always saying to the husband, oh, what are you thinking about?
Yeah.
She wants to know what's on his mind.
Although actually I say that a lot to my wife. She's very quiet and she's not speaking. Say, what are you thinking? What's on your mind?
It's a stereotype. I totally admit that it's not true for everybody. It's a stereotype. And it makes men look bad because men don't care what you're thinking about. Is the joke. They only want to know, so Real or Barca, Audi or BMW. They don't actually care what is actually on your mind.
Well, another example could be, what do you think about Brexit?
Exactly. So
what's your general opinion? Yeah. What's your opinion? Where do you stand? What's your point of view? What do you think about it?
Whereas if I said to Craig, you look really distracted. So what are you thinking about? Yeah, I'm thinking about my friend who's not feeling well. So what are you thinking now? Temporary, not an opinion, but I'm talking about the processing that his brain is doing at this moment. So it's not a state, that's an action. So that's why that one is continuous.
Absolutely. Another group of stative verbs, we can connect with feelings and emotions. Feelings and emotions. For example, I like this podcast, you could say. I like this podcast. Craig and Reza do a really good job. I would not say I'm liking this podcast, not usually, because liking is more of an action. So I like this podcast. It's a feeling I have, an emotion I have about it.
Or even better, if you said, I love this podcast. That means you really, really like it. And do you know that famous advertising slogan which a well-known company have who say, I'm loving it?
McDonald's.
He said, I'm loving it. But they use a continuous there because rather than the opinion that you love something, it's like at that time you're really enjoying it. That's why they say, I'm loving it.
So it's more of an action. It's not more of a passive thing.
Right. Yeah. Like, so there I am eating the hamburger. And at that moment when I'm eating the hamburger, I think, oh, I'm enjoying this. I'm loving this. So that's why they use a continuous.
I do hear liking and loving more in American English. I listen to many American podcasts and I do hear things like, oh, I'm really loving my new mobile phone. I'm really liking this new software I'm using. I do hear that a lot more in American English. So yes, you do hear it, but as an emotion, how you feel about something, it's definitely more common to use the simple form. Yeah, I like it. Or I hate it. I could say, I hate people who double park, doble fila, and leave the handbrake on, freno de mano. So I hate it when people do that. I really hate people who double park and leave the handbrake on. And there's hate as a stative verb.
But again, you could say, I'm hating something if it's just a particular occasion, not a state or opinion, but kind of your action at that moment. For example, imagine I called Craig while I'm on holiday and he said, oh, are you having a good time on holiday? And I say, no, I'm hating it. I'm hating it. It's raining all the time. People aren't friendly. It's really expensive. Yeah, I'm really hating it.
Could say I'm hating the food. Yeah.
So it could be as well.
Maybe because it's more temporary, perhaps, in that situation as well. Yeah, it's a temporary thing. Can you think of another example?
Yeah, the word move. Everybody knows that move means physically go from one place to another. That's true. But there's the emotional meaning of move. In Spanish, it would be conmover. So, for example, your sad story moves me. It makes my emotions change. It moves me. That would usually be simple because it's a feeling, emotion we're talking about.
What other things move you? I'm moved by poverty sometimes, injustice in the world, inequality, perhaps. What other things move you?
Pretty much the same things, yeah, as you said, and they do move me. I also am moved whenever we get any feedback from listeners saying thanks for your podcast.
Yeah.
It genuinely moves us. It really does.
Yeah, especially when you have successes, when you pass exams, when you get a better job or a promotion. So something can move you in a positive way or in a negative way. Suffering moves me when people suffer. So that's the negative use of it. And some other stative verbs in this group of feelings and emotions are dislike, love, prefer, want, and wish. And we'll give you a list of more verbs for you to check at the end of the podcast.
If you think about it, you just know instinctively what to do. I mean, compare this. I want to go to the beach. Sounds good, doesn't it? And what about this sentence, which is incorrect? I'm wanting to go to the beach. It just doesn't sound right, does it? Even though you've maybe never thought about stative verbs and action verbs, you just know it doesn't sound right, does it? I'm wanting to doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound right.
You can use want in the continuous. You can say he's wanting for something, but it's not very common. Yeah, you wouldn't use it normally.
Because the thing is, in Spanish, and I imagine Portuguese as well, for those in Portugal and Brazil listening, and probably other languages, most of these verbs coincide. So you wouldn't say in Spanish, estoy queriendo ir a la playa. If you mean right now, you'd probably just say quiero ir a la playa.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet it's the same in Portuguese. I wouldn't be surprised. However, there are sometimes differences between English and Spanish as regards stative verbs, but the majority are pretty similar, aren't they?
Yeah. Another group we could make are verbs that describe our senses, los sentidos. Verbs like to see, to hear, to taste, to smell, and to feel. And it is, again, more common to see these verbs and use these verbs in the simple form, not in the continuous form. What does this room smell of, Reza?
It smells of freshly baked homemade muffins, I'm happy to say.
Someone's getting hungry. We should break in a second.
I can't wait for that coffee break.
Another example, as Reza said at the beginning of the podcast, how do you feel? How do you feel now that you're divorced, for example? I feel poorer, perhaps, if you had to spend money on the divorce. I feel freer. I feel lonelier, perhaps. How do you feel? So what's the feeling? What is the feeling you have? How do you feel?
So how do you feel? I'm asking about your state, maybe your state of mind. But do you remember earlier I said to Craig that I wasn't sure whether to ask him, how do you feel? Or how are you feeling? I could also say to Craig, how are you feeling? Because he recently had an operation. And there's a slightly different perspective. If I say, how are you feeling? It sounds like more temporary, like right now, compared to say 2 or 3 days ago. But right now, how are you feeling? So it is possible to make a slight difference.
Yeah, which I think is a general, not a rule, but a general guide for the continuous tense often speaks about more temporary things. And the example we gave, I'm really liking my new mobile phone at the moment. And something that stretches longer as more of a habit or a long-term situation or state, you'd use the simple tense, generally speaking.
Here's another one with a verb mentioned earlier by Craig, taste. The soup tastes great.
Use muffin.
Better still, yeah. The muffin tastes great.
You enjoying that muffin?
Yeah, it was a good break, yeah. Now I'm a new man after that because the muffin tastes great, believe me.
Did you see what I did there? Are you enjoying that muffin? You see, now.
Yes, because...
Although enjoy is sometimes used as a state verb. Do you enjoy it?
Yep, yeah. I'm eating it right now, so I'm enjoying it right now.
So these verbs, these state verbs of senses, speaking about your senses, are often used with can. For example, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Or, can you see me? Can you see me now? Or I can feel your pain. Or can you smell the fish?
We as kids used to play this really silly game called Can You Smell the Cheese? Did you play that?
No.
It was pretty simple, pretty moronic, actually. Moronic is for morons, for idiots. You simply held your hand up to someone's face, one hand, put the other hand on top, making a fist, un puño, and said, hey, can you smell the cheese? And incredibly, because young people can be pretty silly at times, people would come up and smell and you just punch them in the nose. But it worked incredibly. It's like, hey, can you smell the cheese? Like, no, come on up. And then,
So the idea was that there was some cheese inside your hand.
possibly.
Okay.
But there was nothing. And you just punched them in the face. And we thought this was terribly funny. Can you smell the cheese?
I can imagine you playing that when you were 22, 23 years old.
45, I gave it up.
So remember, stative verbs describe things that are not actions. Listen to these two sentences. What's the difference? What's the difference between these sentences? Number one, she smells of fish. She smells of fish. And number two, she's smelling the fish. What do you think, Reza?
Yeah. You don't want to get those sentences wrong. You could get into big trouble.
Oh, yes.
She smells of fish means that the woman has a smell which is similar to a fish. So I'm afraid to say she doesn't smell very good.
Maybe she's been cooking fish all morning. She's been in the kitchen.
And yet she needs to have a wash, I would say. She smells of fish. But she's smelling, continuous now, she's smelling the fish. So if it's continuous, it's not a state. It's an action. So she is, exactly. So that's an action. She's using her nose. That's a physical action. So that isn't the state verb. So that one can be continuous. She's smelling the fish.
Maybe to check if it's fresh. Two more examples. I think we should do a podcasting tour around Latin America.
Good idea.
It is, isn't it? And then the second sentence, sorry, what did you say? I was thinking about lunch. So the first sentence is an opinion. It's my opinion about what we could do. But the second is the action. It's more of a dynamic verb. I was thinking about lunch. More of an active, dynamic thing.
So, as Craig said, some verbs can be both stative and dynamic, or if you prefer, an action verb, dynamic or action verb. For example, the verb to be. You might think, oh, be is definitely a state. Well, yeah, be is usually a stative verb, but when it's used in the continuous form, it has a different meaning. It means behave or act. So you can be behaving or acting temporarily in a certain way. So that is action. It's dynamic. It's not a state. I'll tell you what, we'll give you a couple of sentences. Imagine I said, but it's not true. Craig is stupid. Not true at all. Probably better to say Reza is stupid. So it's part of my personality. Reza is stupid. That's the way I am. It's my state. Can't change it. But what about Craig is being stupid? So Craig, he's not a stupid person, but at the moment, he's acting in a stupid way. He's telling jokes, he's laughing when we're trying to record this serious podcast. You know, this is a very serious podcast. So I say, Craig, you're being stupid. Stop it. Please behave.
Yeah, we're very serious on this podcast. Another example, let's look at the verb have, because have can mean to possess or own something. And when you use have to speak about something you possess, it's stative. For example, I don't have any pets. You have a dog, don't you?
I do, Coco.
Or how many pairs of shoes do you have? So this sense of have is possessing. But have can be dynamic when it's used with many expressions. For example, hey Reza, are you having a good time?
I am. I'm podcasting, so of course I'm having a good time. I'm sure you know some other expressions like having a shower. Brian's having a shower. So it's an action, obviously. Or she's having a baby next month. Compare that to she has a baby. Both very common. She has a baby means that the baby has already been born. Maybe it's 2, 3, 4 months old. She has a baby. But she's having a baby next month. Or you could say she's going to have a baby next month. That means she's pregnant and she's going to give birth. She's giving birth in a month.
You could also say, why is she screaming? She's having a baby at the moment. So that idea of the dynamic use of have with ing is different to the use of have as a stative verb.
And I'm having a good time. What fun podcasting, yeah?
But we always have a good time when we podcast. The verb see, S-E-E, can also be stative. For example, what can you see in this room? Well, I can see a TV, I can see a sofa, I can see some chairs, and I can see a desk. What can you see?
You can also say, I see, to mean I understand. I see what you mean. Imagine someone explains something to you and you say, oh, right, now I see. Now I understand.
However, you can use see as a dynamic verb with ing. For example, I'm seeing a girl from London, or I'm seeing a girl from Alicante, for example.
Or it can also mean to meet. Meeting Pepito tomorrow. We're having lunch. And there's have as a dynamic verb, meaning we're eating lunch. Yeah? I'm seeing Pepito tomorrow. That means I'm meeting. And we're having lunch. We're eating lunch.
So I hope we've helped to clarify these stative verbs so that you can understand better the difference. You can see the difference between stative and more dynamic verbs. And now it's your turn to practice your English. Why don't you send us a voice message like Errico and practice your pronunciation, your fluency, your speaking. We'd love to hear where you're from, what you do, any problems you might have with your English. Hopefully we'll be able to help you in a future episode. You can send us your voice messages via SpeakPipe, which is speakpipe.com/Inglés podcast. If you use your mobile phone to send us a SpeakPipe message, then just download the application from the App Store. It's free and it's very, very easy. Reza, how can they contact us by email?
You can contact Craig at craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're looking for a course for your English, why not visit our online store at store.mentioningles.net. We'd also like to thank our wonderful patrons who continue to support the podcast, and all of their names are on our website at inglespodcast.com. Special thanks to Bruno, our gold sponsor. Errico, if this is your question, this is the guy who offers walking tours of Copenhagen in English and Spanish. More information at copenhagenwalkingtour.com. And Bruno also shows people around an area of your wonderful city, Rio de Janeiro. His tour of the favela is led by local guides. It's very safe and it helps the community to improve their daily needs. For more information on that tour, go to Bruno's website at favelawalkingtour.com.br.
Yes, so muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado.
To all of our patrons. You can find the complete list on our show notes, but a special mention of a new Patreon supporter who has just joined us this month. Thanks very much to Mercedes Dominguez, our latest Patreon sponsor.
Hi, Mercedes, and thank you for joining. You can join our Patreon program like Mercedes has done for a minimum of $1 per month. You get instant access to transcriptions of these podcasts. If there's something you don't understand, if you'd like to read and listen at the same time, Our wonderful transcriber is Angelica Bello, who transcribes the episodes for you. And you can get those at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/Inglés podcast. As usual, full details and links to all of these places on our website at inglespodcast.com. Reza, what's next week?
On next week's episode, rather and prefer.
I think I'd rather go and have a muffin now. What do you think?
Yeah, good idea.
Okay, we're going to have our muffins. Thanks for listening. See you next week and have a great week. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.